My name is Ahmed Ali Hersi, metric number 274853, and I'll be talking about the economic indicators pandemic COVID 19, pre, during, and post pandemic. We'll start with the introduction. Malaysia's MCOs tackle the pandemic. Every MCO is associated to poor mental health, poorer income, and poverty. The administration modified MCO to reduce economic damage since May. While Malaysia was recovering from the second MCO, the infection rates will have skyrocketed. Starting 1st June 2021, the government will impose EMCO on chosen states until daily cases drop below 4,000.
Hello.
I'll be talking now about the effect on economy before the pandemic. Following a rope-sought rise in 2017, it was anticipated that Malaysia's economic development will return to normal in 2018. Nevertheless, the economy struggled with a variety of internal and external issues all year long. Trade disputes on a worldwide scale and Malaysia's historic change of government became sources of economy worry, which led to significant legislative and political change. Malaysia's economy performance suffered from unexpected supply interruptions in the commodities industries, which caused growth to slow down more than projected. The rapid expansion of the Malaysia economy in 2018 was a robust 4.7% demonstration, amazing intensity there in face of significant difficulties. In Malaysia, the labor force expanded by 2.0% from 15.0 million people in 2017 to approximately 15.3 million people in 2018. To 2,999 employed people contributed to the rise in the labor force compared to 2017, when it was 68.0%. The labor force participation rate rose 0.3 percentage points to 68.3% in 2018. On the other hand, the jobless rate dropped from 3.4% in 2017 to 3.3% in 2018. This demonstrates that the economy of the nation is still experiencing full employment, which is below 4.0 in 2018. The female LFPR increased 0.5 percent points to 55.2% in comparison to female LFPR all the nation level. Female market participation in the prime age of 25 to 34, 73.6% to 67.9%. Female market participation in the prime age of 25 to 34, 73.6%, 35 to 44 years, 67.9%, and 45 to 54 years old, 58.8% was higher. In 2018, 80.4% of men participated in the labor force, up 80.4% of men participated in the labor force, up to 0.3 percentage points from the year before. The LFPR for the 15 to 24 year old age group saw the largest increase, rising 1.2 percentage points to 51.0%. The age group of 35 to 44 years saw an increase of 0.3 percentage points to 97.7% overall. For all age categories, male LFPR was still greater than female LFPR. Malaysia anticipates domestic demand and still strong exports to help sustain 5.0 to 5.5% growth in 2018. The country's economic performance has improved significantly this year as a result of higher commodity prices. Commodity exports have dramatically increased this year. Natural gas revenue increased by 34.6% to 26.9 billion ringgit in the first 8 months. Compared to the same period last year, and crude oil revenue increased by 33.2% to 18.2 billion ringgits. Over the same time period, exports of palm oil increased 18.8% to 30.6 billion ringgits. Domestic demand, which is expected to increase by 5.5% in 2018 and contribute 72.9% of GDP, will continue to be the primary engine of the economy, with a percentage of GDP of 71.4%. Private sector growth is projected to be 6.4% in 2017. The manufacturing sector growth slowed to 4.7 from 5% in 2018. Printed circuit boards, electronic integrated circuit, microassemblies, and communication equipments were the primary contributors in this sector, which saw a gain of 6.9%. The main contributions in the sector remained electrical, electronic, and political items. The petroleum, chemical, and rubber plastic products industry grew by 3.6% with help from refined petroleum, rubber, and plastic products. An additional boost to manufacturing performance was provided by transport equipment. Other manufacture and repair, which grew to 8.7% in the quarter, motor vehicles and other forms of transportation equipments were responsible for this activity steadfast growth. After recording a 6.0% growth in 2017, the manufacturing sector expanded by 5.0% in 2018. The percentage of employed Malaysians with tertiary education increased by 0.5 percent points from 28.1% in 2017 to 28.6% in 2018. Furthermore, the proportion of people with primary and secondary education who are employed decreased from 13 to 13.5% in 2017 to 13.1% in 2018, and from 55.8% in 2017 to 55.6% in 2018, respectively, compared to the previous year when it was 2.6%. There was 0.1 percentage points more employed people in 2018 with no formal schooling during the year 2018. Roughly 48.4% of those who were actively looking for work found employment in less than 3 months, and 29.3% did so between 3 and 6 months in 2018. There was 9.7% of people who were actively looking for work during a period of more than a year, and 12.6% of people who had been unemployed for more than 6 months but less than a year. Largest trade surplus since 2012 as exports reached almost 1 trillion ringgit in 2018, supported by stronger than expected export growth. Malaysia's total trade in 2018 remained resilient, expanding by 5.9% to 1.876 trillion ringgit compared with 1.771 trillion ringgit in 2017. Despite the uncertainties in the global environment, exports rose by 6.7 to reach a value of 9980.1 billion, surpassing the forecast export growth of 4.4% in the Economic Outlook 2019. The value of imports climbed by 4.9% to 877.74 billion, the greatest trade surplus since 2012 and the quickest rate in 10 years. Malaysia's trade surplus increased by 22.1% to 120 billion ringgit. ASEAN remained as an important and strategic trading partner for Malaysia, accounting for 27.1% of Malaysia's total trade in 2018, valued at 509.2 billion with an increase of 4.7% from 2012. Malaysia's overall exports increased by 5% to 285% point 3 billion, making up 28.6% of all exports. Greater exports to Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, the Philippines, and Cambodia, which together represented 87.1% of Malaysia's exports to the region, helped to support the increase. The effect on economy during the pandemic. Both the Malaysian macroeconomy and the economic welfare have been severely impacted by the COVID 19. There seem to be two major factors that contribute to Malaysia's economy difficulties. Firstly, it is caused by the coronavirus effects abroad, and the second is caused by the new movement control measures on international travel. Before the partial lockdown in Malaysia, the beginning of the new COVID 19 in China already had caused big changes in supply and demand. Exports of commodities all over the world had to deal with lower prices when China demand dropped, and manufacturers all over the world had to deal with production cuts when China's factories shut down. However, this may have a huge impact on Malaysia's economy. The Malaysian economy is one of the highest exposed economy to China's demand and supply in terms of trade. Malaysia relies heavily on China. Malaysia's business have been closely interlinked with the global supply chain during the last decade. As a result, region supply networks have grown increasingly China-centric. A substantial portion of the commerce between Malaysia and China involves intermediary goods. These intermediary goods are most impact, impacted by global supply chains disruptions. The MCO in preventing the spread of a new coronavirus in Malaysia will have serious economic consequences. The macroeconomic levels from closures, movement restrictions, and travel bans will also have a severe impact on cuts on consumers and private consumption and investment. A greater number of people and businesses will suffer as a result. Individuals and businesses affected by the partial shutdown will be at a high risk of encountering sudden cash flow problems as their earnings fall. Hence, it can have effects on the whole economy, leaving businesses bankrupt, people running out of money, and the financial system with non-performing debts. Moreover, the economic policy response of Malaysia to the coronavirus pandemic consists of two separate segments. The first stage must be applied when a quarantine or partial lockdown is established in order to protect the venue and liquidity of the firm and persons who are impacted by the situation. The first stage should primarily focus on ensuring the welfare of the population by providing them with a stable source of income and liquid assets. Individuals and businesses will be able to take a break from work without affecting their ability to stay financially sustainable for individuals. The main goal is to reduce the effect on the pandemic on the Malaysian people's ability to make a living, such as the lower income or unemployed workers. The effect on economy after the pandemic. In the first few months of the new year, Malaysia hit the ground running and performed at a high level. The year 2020 was supposed to represent a turning point for Malaysians. People had greater expectations that the digital nation of the country would make sensational progress toward becoming a more developed nation on the international stage by that time. SARS-CoV-2 is a novel coronavirus that causes the sickness known as COVID-19. As is well known, this virus is responsible for the unprecedented catastrophic that has befallen the world's health system. The widespread dissemination of COVID 19 has not only caused widespread fear, but has also brought the world's economy to a complete stop. Because of this illness, both our personal life and operations of our businesses were for a small period of time entirely turned upside down. The purpose of the Movement Control Order (MCO) in Malaysia, which has been in effect since March 18, 2020, is to prevent the pandemic from further spreading. I penned these thoughts at a period in which the community as a whole and the local businesses were making substantial sacrifices and achieving positive results. It feels that we are now headed in the right direction as a result of these effects. We have seen businesses across abroad a variety of sectors coming in a grinding stop, which has led to a significant decline in economic activity. On the other hand, I believe that every adversity presents an opportunity for improvement and development. In order to maintain their position in the market, many businesses have been forced to implement significant change to their organization structures. Because of the proliferation of technology as a lifeline, it is now simpler than ever before to run a number of enterprises and to maintain contact with loved ones who are located back at home. In China, robots and drones are being used to sanitize hospitals, but in South Korea, officials are using cell phones and satellite technology to track probable carriers of an infectious disease. After all, it seems that the year 2020 will go down in history as a watershed moment. Now, many of us see the current days as the beginning of the end, a turning point in the situation as a consequence of this. Industry professionals are already introducing new strategic to help decrease the impact of COVID-19, which also enabling Malaysians to recover from MCO in a way that is both healthy and responsible. How the government overcome the COVID-19 pandemic. The Ministry of Health will continue to produce standard operating procedures and standards, but the businesses will be free to begin operations as of May 4, 2020, despite the fact that they must continue to comply with these regulations. However, there is still a social stigma associated with the global pandemic, and it has been around for quite some time. Working remotely, carrying out operations in a digital format, and many more uses of technology are only some of the new ways of working and living that have become possible as a result of technological advancements. It is astonishing how rapidly Malaysians have adjusted to the new standards that has been established. To fulfill their responsibilities, our frontline and backline personnel, along with a great number of people who play important parts, will still need to physically present. One of our duties as a citizens of Malaysia and as exclusives in charge of businesses is to look out for their well-being while they are on the job. When I took a step back and looked at the broad picture, I had the impression that the technological advancement would make great strides during the MCO. Several innovative digital solutions are giving fresh life to an environment that was already in the process of undergoing change. The norms of individual are shifting towards the usage of internet platforms, cooperations, and embracing new ways of communication and conversing technology and increasingly being used for social gatherings. Obviously, there is still a significant need for return to work solutions across a wide variety of occupations and businesses. Many team members and jobs will be expected to complete self-assessment surveys hosted on the web, check for abnormal body temperatures, keep track of contacts, and do a great deal more. Solutions include those that can help identify people who may be sick while still allowing healthy employees, contractors, and visitors to enter an office or facility using a unique QR code for enhanced control and contact tracking. Other solutions include those that can help identify people who may have been exposed to a contagious illness. As a consequence of this congestion, surface reinfection and social alienation will be prevented as at the entry point of the workplace owing to the utilization of the QR code readers and QR code that were created by the system. Conclusion. In conclusion, since the beginning of time, the world has been shaken by a large number and variety of extremely infectious diseases that have reached proportions. Well known examples, including the Spanish flu, which killed 40 to 50 million people, and the Podenic plague, which killed approximately 200 million people. Fortunately, these outbreaks are becoming less common in modern society. However, catastrophic outbreaks do occur from time to time, and a few have reached the level of seriousness as the COVID-19. What began as a viral flu outbreak has now evolved into a global pandemic. Over 2 million people have been infected worldwide, with over 140,000 deaths. Not only are people suffering from this tragedy, but the economy is as well, with countries imposing lockdowns or movement control orders, causing a severe economic impact on the global supply chain. Bankrupts, plummeting stock markets, and unemployment. Overall, it is destroying the world's economies, including Malaysia's, following extensive research. Here is my assessment of how Malaysia's economy is being harmed in terms of its in terms of its multiple key sectors, exchange rate, stock market, and government actions to mitigate economic losses. To begin with, COVID-19 has put a strain on a number of Malaysia's key industries. Malaysia's manufacturing sectors, for example, is facing a crisis in the manufacturing of the commodities such as oil and gas due to the global crude oil crisis, which has caused oil prices to plummet this year. In addition to the material disruptions caused by the MCO, another industry that is expected to suffer the most is tourism. Travelers will be forced to postpone their trips and cancel hotels and flight reservations, which will be a huge loss for Malaysia, which was ranked the third most popular Asian travel destination in 2018. As a result, the country's gross domestic product will fall because fewer goods and services can be produced. Furthermore, an increase in unemployment as a result of employee retrenchment by some companies will reduce net income and thus GDP. Thank you for listening.